I have a confession to make. I have never seen a Geography Now video. I know, that seems a little crazy. They have over 2 million subscribers. They're one of the most popular sort of mapping history geography channels out there. And yet I've never seen one of their videos before. It's been recommended to me before, but for whatever reason, I've never watched it. So I figured, hey, why not make a reaction video out of it? Because it's on my country, where I'm from, Canada. And what a better way to watch a video about Canada than to watch a t-shirt. To watch a t-shirt. That's new. That's staying in. To wear a t-shirt with my favorite Canadian band on it, the Pack AD, that are two women from Vancouver. They're excellent. Go check them out. So I don't really know entirely what this video is going to be about and what it's going to look at individually. I don't know if it's going to get into politics. I don't know if it's going to get into, if it's only going to talk about geography, populations. No idea. So let's have a look at it. Geography Now, Canada, and a Canadian reacting to it.
Here at Geography Now, we got over 40 people that emailed us to help out with this episode from Canada. So without further ado, here comes the
Cheers.
Canada episode.
It's time to learn geography now!
Hey Geography peeps, I'm your host Barbie. A lot of people sometimes have trouble distinguishing between Americans from the US and Canadians. Here's a little analogy.
Ouch.
Americans are kind of like teenage boys. They're opinionated, energetic, and confident, whereas Canadians are kind of like teenage girls. They'll be polite to you to your face, but then they'll talk crap behind your back.
All right, so that was pretty much perfect. I'm glad he said that. I'm glad he didn't say, oh, but they're super polite and perfect. I'm glad that he's already sort of dispelling the myth of Canadian stereotypes that we're all polite and amazing and blah, 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 which is not true. Obviously, I've met my share of rude people in Canada, and Canadians are not perfect individuals that are polite with everything.
That being said, let's see if we can dissect the flag.
Not. So I'll let him talk, but this is not our original flag. This was brought in by the 60s. It was actually a design contest, and it was made by Lester B. Pearson. Well, it wasn't made by Lester B. Pearson, but it was approved by Lester B. Pearson's government. Before then, we had the Union Jack flag with the coat of arms on it as well.
The flag consists of a red field with a white square in the middle. In the middle of the entire flag lies a single 11-pointed red maple leaf. Red symbolizes the sacrifice during both world wars, and the white symbolizes the peace, tranquility, and neutrality of the country. The maple leaf has historically been a symbol of Canada for centuries, even during British rule. Some Canadians will tell you the 11 points symbolize the provinces, and the last one being for the territories, but that's not really true. That's just kind of how the leaf looks. Also, keep in mind, Quebec would much rather fly this flag instead of the maple leaf, but we'll discuss more about that in...
Wow. Okay, so never mind. I didn't even need to go so quickly through that. I thought he was going to bring up our old flag. So Canada was a former colonial, what would you say, country of Britain. One of the 5 great colonies, so to say, that being India, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and Canada. And we not really gained independence, but was able to push independence more in the 1920s. This was from our Prime Minister, Sir William Lyon Mackenzie King. And there was always a sort of idea to sort of have a Canadian flag, a unique Canadian flag that didn't have the Union Jack on it. This was eventually pushed into the 60s, where the government of Lester B. Pearson actually held a contest to design the Canadian flag. And there are a few other interesting designs that you can find online. However, this was the one that was finally selected, and it's been our national flag ever since. To comment on the Quebec one, this is the Quebec provincial flag. This has the, I'm so sorry for the pronunciation here, the Fleur de Lys. I'm so sorry. Please don't kill me in the comment section. But this, yes, Quebecers would rather fly this. I was on a trip actually in Israel with a Quebecer, and a few people, one person brought a Canadian flag so that they could take pictures with it, and he brought the Quebec flag because he said that he feels more of a Quebecer than a Canadian. And I'm sure they're going to get into that in this section here.
Safe to say that you can bet that there's going to be a lot of interesting things when it comes.
Sorry, let me get back a little bit here.
Alright, so Canada is huge. It's the second largest country in the world, so it's
True.
pretty safe to say that you can bet that there's going to be a lot of interesting things when it comes to administrative divisions. First of all, Canada is located on the North American continent, right above the United States, bordered by 3 oceans, the Atlantic, the Arctic, and the Pacific on all 3 sides. The country stretches over 6 time zones and is divided into 10 provinces. Yes, people, Newfoundland and Labrador are together one province, and 3 territories in the north. The capital of Ottawa being in the province...
It's not Ottawa, it's Ottawa, so it's Ottawa, not Ottawa. The original capital of Canada was actually Kingston, Ontario, which is roughly here-ish, if you can see that with my mouse. But it was eventually, after Confederation, I believe, Ottawa was chosen as the capital. I think one of the reasons being that it lies on the Quebec-Ontario border. So on the other side of the river in Ottawa is Gatineau, which is a city in Quebec, and then Ottawa lies in Ontario, which is this province here, which I'm sure he'll get into, and it is it has the most amount of people living in it in Canada, and that's where I'm originally from. I'm originally from Toronto, which is the capital of Ontario. No, Toronto is not the capital of Canada. It's Ottawa.
Of Ontario. Ooh, now let's have some fun. Now, the thing is, Canada's domain is lavished with sovereignty enigma and semi-autonomous wonder. First of all, let's talk about the border. At over 8,800 kilometers or 5,500 miles, with thousands of markers along the way, Canada and the US have the world's longest border between any 2 countries. Things are a little tame on the east coast, except for that one island they have a dispute with Denmark over, and that one other island within kayaking distance that France refuses to let go of until...
Okay. 2 things. So first off, that little dispute with Denmark, very true. We also have a dispute with Norway too, but I won't get into that entirely. This is Saint-Pierre-and-Miquelon. This actually does belong to France. It's not that they won't just get rid of it, but I believe that the people there actually want to remain a part of it. This is actually a part of the European Union, since France is in the European Union, and Saint-Pierre-and-Miquelon, people there born with both Canadian and French privileges. So they're able to go and live and work in the European Union, as well as do the same thing in Canada too.
So you get to the Quebec-Vermont border, and things get a little messed up when you reach Derby Line and Stansted. Since the town was built before modern-day borders were properly established, the town has a variety of houses, businesses, and buildings that lie directly on the border. Haskell Free Library even marks the border in its reading rooms and has an entrance for people on the US side and the Canada side. People of each country must enter on their side, and if they exit on the opposite country, they must stay on the sidewalk and report to the customs office. Failure to do so and stepping on the road can result in arrest. And this delightfully accidental slab of confusion, known as the Northwest Angle, that belongs to Minnesota, mostly owned by the Ojibwe tribe, situated on the Lake of the Woods, where you can find the reassuringly perfect getaway spots, Massacre Island, and Little Massacre Island. The rest of the border tries as best as it can to cut straight on the 49th parallel, even though it zigzags a little bit, and 4 airports have runways that either straddle or are exactly parallel to the border. Somewhere around 80% of Canadians live within 100 miles or 160 kilometers to the border of the US, and the further north you go, things just get a little kind of fuzzy and neglected. They still...
Yep, and even then, so there's also the Golden Horseshoe here, as we call it, which is between Ajax and St. Catharines, in Niagara Falls, that sort of loops around Lake Ontario here, and roughly 30% of Canada's population live within this Golden Horseshoe at all, right? So even though Canada is this ginormous country, so much of us live really, really close to the U.S. border. Toronto itself is around 150 kilometers away from the U.S. border, and so that's why the statistic, I find it so interesting, that despite this country being so large, very, very few people live outside of sort of this region here.
Have a little bit of trouble integrating the rest of the land the further up you go. There are only 2 main highways that lead to the Yukon and Northwest territories from the south, whereas there are virtually no roads leading to any of the provinces or territories into none of it. The only way to get into none...
So Nunavut is one of the newest territories. It's the newest, province or territory in Canada. The second most recent being Newfoundland, which joined in 1949, which used to be a part of the British Commonwealth. However, Nunavut was created in 1999. Sorry, did I say Newfoundland joined in 1999? They joined in 1949. Anyways, Nunavut is the latest province, and the capital is Iqaluit, where very, very few people live. There's a fun little, I guess it's kind of fun, little statistic that more people work in the Scotiabank Tower in Toronto downtown than live in all of the territories combined, right? So very, very few people live up here, but for some friends that have visited there, it's one of nature's sort of untouched, beautiful places to be in all of Canada. I did a video on this by Alternate History Hub. It's called Other North Canada Tales. Check that out. I'll put a card in the top right here. Oh, top right, whatever. Top right here if you want to check that one out.
Of the provinces or territories into Nunavut. The only way to get into Nunavut is to either fly or take a boat. I mean, technically you could walk across the border, but that would suck.
No.
Speaking of Nunavut, Canada has the most northerly inhabited place in the world. Alert Canada.
Yep. So Northern Alert, this is actually where we have there's military presence up there as well. This is where my friend was, because she's an Army reservist, and so am I. And yeah, she said it's just absolutely beautiful up there, although she was happy that she was only there for a few weeks and not for the rest of her life.
A perpetually icy, frozen, desolate
So you can
settlement
actually
typically
see that.
operated by as
I think
few as
those were,
5
I think, yeah, see, these are CAF members here. Right?
people year-round, functioning as both as a militaristic station and a seasonal research facility. Now, the one thing you have to know about Canada's administrative divisions is that it all kind of constitutionally fits together until you get to Quebec. Although Quebec is still considered a province of Canada, they've made it very clear in the past that they have a strong sense of Quebecois nationalism that many even take to the separatist extreme. Nonetheless, many of Canada's divisions and functions are heavily influenced by the landscape, such we will discuss in...
So to talk about, oh boy. So to talk about Quebec separatism, now as of 2020, I want to say, Quebec is actually recognized as a separate nation. Okay, let me be very clear with my words here. They are not recognized as a separate nation, meaning that they are a separate country. However, they're recognized as an individual nation in the Confederation of Canada. This was voted in 2020 or 2021, I want to say, in Parliament. And there are some people that are very much against this sort of idea. If you look up the YouTuber JJ McCullough, he does some really great videos on that. He writes some good columns on the Washington Post if you're interested more in that. However, there is really a sense of feeling that Quebec is their own separate nation, right? And that there was bouts of Quebec separatism, the most recent being in, I want to say, 1994, 1995, maybe 96, where the vote was 51% stay and 49 point whatever to leave. So we almost had our own Quebexit, so to say, in the 1990s before we ended up having Brexit in 2016. So this is still a contentious political issue in Canada today. It is something that likely always will be a contentious political issue. However, the actual separatism seems to really be dying down in the 2010s and the 2020s as well. So there's some brief political history on you for Quebec. I could make an entire video about that. Maybe I will in the future. If you're interested in that, let me know. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much. I appreciate you.
Strong sense of Quebecois national are heavily influenced by the landscape, such we will discuss in... Okay, so once again, Canada is huge and often referred to as the Great White North. However, not all of Canada is a chilly Arctic tundra. First of all,
So what's even funny about it being referred to as the Great White North is that if you look at a map based on longitude, I believe, Toronto actually sits on the same, they sit on the same longitude as Milan. So Canada is actually not as quite north as one would think, at least where most Canadians live. However, when you go obviously way, way, way up into the north, that is really the Great White North. However, most Canadians, when you visit Toronto or you visit even somewhere like Vancouver, Calgary, Winnipeg, even, Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, if you will, they're not as these frozen sort of tundras, Great White North imagery that you would think.
Canada's physical features are built with a strange yet complementary mix of geological and meteorological, yes, that's a word, meteorological facets. Looking at Canada, one of the most notable features that sticks out would have to probably be the Hudson Bay, the second largest bay in the world.
So this was discovered by a man by the name of Hudson, who was trying to find a way to sail across, and the Hudson's Bay Company was formed during colonial Canada, so before we were recognized as a nation under Confederation in 1867, and was one of the most important trading routes in North America, and it made the country of Canada very rich. There was a lot of trappings, so fur trapping, and it's one of the big economic booms that Canada had in the 1800s.
After the Bay of Bengal, and the largest bay that freezes over in winter. This bay provides a drainage basin that hydrates about half of the entire country and a little bit of the northwest of the US. The strange thing is that the Hudson Bay actually sits on a gravitational anomaly in which gravity here is actually a little bit lower than the rest of the planet's average. It has to do with some kind of sciencey reason about ground convection, ice melt rebound, yada yada yada. Hey guys, want to lose some weight? Try the new workout and diet trend, Hudson 90X. Our diet and workout plan includes going to the Hudson Bay! No, but seriously, almost nobody lives along the Hudson Bay. It's almost impossible to build roads with the rugged, splotchy rock landscape with too many ponds and lakes getting in the way for any straight highway to be built. Speaking of which, at around
the only way to really get out there is by helicopter.
2 to 3 million, it's actually speculated that around 60% of all the world's lakes and about 30% of all the world's fresh water can be found in Canada. Tap water can actually have better quality than bottled water in Canada.
So that's, so apparently, I don't know if this is true, but apparently Toronto has the clean, I don't know why I'm saying Toronto in this video, it should be Toronto, but Toronto has the cleanest fresh water in the world. I don't know if that's true. I've heard debating things about that, but yes, drinking tap water is very, very common, at least in Canada. I'm pretty sure it's common in most countries, but I digress.
That's to do largely with the domineering freckly crevice zone that takes up about half of the entire country, the Canadian Shield. The Canadian Shield is a wide plateau of exposed Precambrian igneous rock that harbors little soil and vegetation, but offers a glory field of mining. Canada has some of the world's richest deposits of metal ores like nickel, gold, silver, and copper. 2/3.
And this is one of the reasons why Canada is such a rich nation too, is we have a very, very we've heavily invested into our mining corporations, and the oil. A lot of people talk about the oil companies and their work, their effects on climate change, and it seems that the mining companies have sort of slipped under the popular conscious radar, at least as far as the time of recording this now in 2022 here. So who knows? Maybe these will come more into spotlight in the Canadian consciousness in the coming years.
Of all the cesium in the world comes from one mine in Manitoba, Burnick Lake. Fun little side note, Canada has the world's largest third-order lake island. That's an island in a lake on an island in a lake on an island. Located on Victoria Island, this little squiggly 4-acre rock was discovered by map nerds who scrolled Google Maps just a couple of years ago. The island has no name and has most likely never had anyone step foot on it. I mean, I'll do it if nobody else will, but I might need a corporate sponsorship. I'm looking at you, Aunt Jemima. Canada also has 2 of the top 10 largest impact craters on Earth. Sudbury Crater in Ontario and Manicouagan in Quebec with its almost perfectly circular imprint flooded and now a reservoir that you can see from space. Okay, there's a lot more in this section, so I'm just going to kind of rapid fire throughout all the rest of the facts. About 40% of the country is covered in forest and about 1/10 of the world's forests are in Canada. Over 60% of the world's polar bears live in Canada. The Bay of Fundy has the world's highest tidal range with the highest point being over 16 meters. Niagara Falls looks cool.
Niagara Falls is absolutely gorgeous, but what's funny about Niagara Falls is that most of it is just this really cheap tourist attraction that's by Clifton Hill. If you ever go to Niagara Falls, ignore Clifton Hill and just go look at the falls themselves. And take the Maid of the Mist. It's super, super fun.
Thor has the world's highest vertical drop. Quebec alone supplies about 70% of the world's maple syrup, and they
However, there is a lot of maple syrup production in Maine as well.
Actually have a maple syrup reserve with over 222,000 barrels of maple syrup. Prince Edward Island has a weird natural phenomena in which the sands on the beach make this weird squeaking noise when you step on it. Here's some footage.
I didn't know that. Cool.
The
Random.
largest inland lakes besides the ones shared with the US on the Great Lakes are the Great Bear and Great Slave Lakes, named after the Slavey people. No, I'm not talking about slaves, I'm talking about the Slavey people. There's a difference. One we'll discuss in...
Oh, this is going to get spicy.
Canada is one of those places where everybody kind of fits in, but there's always a little bit of gossip going around every corner. First of all, Canada has about 35 million people, making it one of the least densely populated places on Earth, about 3/4 of whom identify as white. Asians make up about 14%. Natives and Aboriginal peoples make up a surprising 5%. Blacks at 3%, Latinos at 2%, and the rest are just kind of...
Yeah, and so a lot of the Asian populations are very spread out amongst Canada. I won't get all the way into it, but there was a lot of Asian immigration to Canada. However, the Canadian government, right, which is obviously a sort of a stain on Canada's history, tried very much so to limit immigration from Asian communities. There was obviously, too, we had sort of the Japanese internment camps during World War II. as well as the United States, which is obviously a stain on our history. However, there are a lot of Asians that live in generally urban centers, as well as on the West Coast. So particularly in British Columbia, you'll see a lot of Chinese, Japanese immigrants as well. 5% native. So as I hope everyone watching this video knows, Canada was a colony of the British Empire, as I formerly talked about, and the Native Americans who initially settled here. And we've, throughout history, obviously pushed the Native Americans out of their traditional lands. And this is certainly a political issue that is getting more and more prevalent as the years goes on. And I think really is going to be the next, the next contentious political issue that Canadians and the Canadian government will have to deal with, is sort of how do we move forward with reconciliation. It's a very, very important topic in Canadian politics. It's one that has a lot of diverging opinions on how exactly to move forward with reconciliation. However, I do think that it's important that it is recognized. It's important to history. But obviously the question of what to do with it that's up for debate.
Everything else. Now, again, Canada's population takes another turn because in addition to ethnicity, Canada also has linguistic groups. About one out of every 3 Canadians either speaks French fluently or understands enough to get by. The whole
Okay, how is that defined? But I digress.
Quebec thing kind of plays a paramount role in Canada's societal operations. They kind of have to work really hard to make sure that this one province cooperates. Also, keep in mind, Quebec isn't the only place in Canada where French is spoken. Communities in Ontario, Manitoba, and especially the Maritime Province like Newfoundland, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia have huge communities
Did you say Newfoundland? It's Newfoundland or Newfoundland, but
of French speakers. The difference, though, is that these French speakers have an even deeper level of segregated culture. Many people in the Maritime provinces have a unique Acadian French culture that differs from Quebec. Fun side note, the Cajun people of the U.S. in Louisiana are generally descended from the Acadian people that were expelled and deported from these provinces by the British in the 1700s. Back then, the Louisiana Purchase didn't happen yet, so all of...
So just very briefly, the Louisiana Purchase was by Thomas Jefferson. He purchased all this land from France, and he purchased it from Napoleon at the time, which was the largest federal expansion of the United States of all time. And even though Jefferson was very small government and he was against the federal government, he went and purchased the largest federal expansion in the United States history.
This area was still French. Yada yada yada, they came over and invented gumbo. So that's why Cajuns speak French, America, because Canada! Nonetheless,
okay.
About 1 out of every 5 Canadians was born outside of Canada, making Canada pretty diverse, especially by U.S. entertainment quota standards. Alright, toss in a black guy, an Asian girl, why not throw in one of those Indian guys? Those people are trending these days. But make sure the lead is a handsome, attractive, rugged white guy. And this is where I want to...
Yeah, and so Canada obviously does have quite high immigration levels. At the time we're recording this, I believe we take in around 400,000 immigrants a year. Again, immigration always comes down to a political topic, but what I will talk about is that sort of multiculturalism is something that's sort of seen as a part of the Canadian identity. Again, there's obviously political sects that disagree with this. However, I think your average sort of center Canadian would agree that multiculturalism is a part of our culture. And again, just like with Aboriginal politics, it's what to do moving forward.
Make a Geography Now spotlight. Canada has a somewhat shrouded community of under-highlighted individuals that typically go unnoticed even by Canadians. Sure, we can talk about Toronto, Vancouver, heck, even Calgary has some chips on the table, but nobody really gives these guys a chance. So Yukon, Northwest, none of it, I'm putting you guys on display. Altogether, the population of all 3 of these territories is only about 110,000 people, making it the most sparsely populated area of all of Canada. First of all, Indigenous peoples of Canada number about 850,000 and altogether have about 630 reservations speckled throughout the entire country. The largest reserves are located in these territories. Indigenous people in Canada are generally categorized into 3 separate groups. The First Nations, the Métis, and the Inuit. The Métis are mixed-race Indigenous, the First Nations are generally southern tribes that typically live in forested areas, and the Inuit are straight-up Arctic folk. Here's how you can kind of distinguish the 3 territories. Yukon is predominantly white, the Northwestern Territories has a lot of First Nation tribes, like the Slavey people who can be found close to the Great Slave Lake, although many of them prefer to be called the Dene. Cool side note, the Navajo tribe in the US to some extent trace their heritage to these people. See how everything is connected, people? Finally,
it's almost like we're almost like one giant continent called North America.
We reach Nunavut, which is almost exclusively Inuit. The Northwest Territories and Nunavut actually used to be part of the same territory, but then in 1999, Nunavut was like, I ain't having none of it.
I beat you to it.
Thing. No, but seriously, Inuit culture is one of the most underrated and culturally fascinating things you'll ever encounter. They speak Inuktitut, a cousin of the Greenlandic language. They can pretty much understand each other, and they have their own written script that you can find on street signs and traffic posts. They have a long history of vibrant traditions, rituals, games, music, and even cuisine. If you ever come here, make sure you try some whale blubber and watch a throat game song which looks like this. What a great way to make friends. Which takes us to...
Yep, and so the North, like I said, if you want to check it, if you want to hear more about Northern Canada, check out my video by Alternative History Hub.
Canada is friends with everyone. The end. Nah, okay, let's elaborate just a little bit more. Okay, so Canada does kind of typically maintain a foreign policy that does encourage diplomacy outreach to pretty much every country that they can grab at. Heck, they even had good ties with Cuba after...
Yeah, and this was one thing that was actually, this was during while Pierre Trudeau was Prime Minister. Canada actually did have good relations with Cuba. Obviously, this did cause some discontent with the Americans at the time. And this sort of gave birth to the conspiracy that Fidel Castro is Justin Trudeau's father. Because they apparently, a young Fidel Castro kind of looks like Justin Trudeau, which is obviously a bit of I think it's more of a joke than anything. I don't think anyone genuinely believes that, but with conspiracy theories, you never know.
The U.S. put an embargo on them. Nonetheless, Canada's relations kind of typically shadow those of the U.S. Allies with the same allies, and opponents with the same opponents. I mean, have you seen the movie Argo? First of all, Canada is not only part of the Commonwealth, but the Commonwealth realm. Yes, there's a difference. So in general, they pretty much get along with everything that was once part of the British Empire. Then you get the Francophone countries that also gel well with Canada as well. The funny thing is, although the U.S. complains about the immigration procedures of Mexicans into the U.S., Canada is actually trying to coerce and entice Mexicans to come in. With its low birth rate and a need for a bigger workforce to assist the aging population, Canada has relaxed its immigration and visa policies in order to gain skilled workers, and specifically from the Central American regions. Flyers and advertisements are spread all over Mexico encouraging them to move in. Of course, when it comes to those closest to them, Canada does have their top pick. The United States. Some say Canada is like the little brother of the US, some say it's like the best friend, but in all honesty, Canada and the US are kind of like teenage high school sweethearts. Canadians and Americans have been there for each other since day one. The US is the largest export and business partner of Canada and shares the closest diplomatic ties both nationalistically and militaristically. The difference between Canadians and Americans, though, is that Americans gain their independence by force, whereas Canadians by diplomacy.
Okay, that's a bit of a gross oversimplification, but the trade, so about 70% of our exports go towards the United States. To say that they're our biggest business partner is almost understating how big of a business partner the United States is. And a lot of United States policies really deeply affect Canada. So for example, and I don't want to discuss just modern politics, but when Donald Trump, when he put those steel tariffs on Canada, obviously that did have an effect on Canadian industry. And any sort of what the United States does pretty much nearly always affect Canada when it comes to economic decisions, right? In particular with free trade and the moving of imports and exports.
American immigration policy is like a melting pot where people are kind of expected to assimilate, whereas Canadian foreign policy is kind of like a mosaic. People are encouraged to be distinct.
I think that's a gross oversimplification. Immigration, as I talked about in Canada, is more complicated than that. To say a melting pot or a mosaic, I mean, okay, sure. I'll leave it at that.
Culturally. In all honesty, though, they are kind of like a cute little teenage boyfriend-girlfriend couple. Sometimes they like to poke fun at each other, but at the end of the day, they're totally dating and they're totally making out with each other in the back of the movie theaters.
Yeah, and Canada thinks that they have the moral high ground at all times, which is something that's probably sometimes a little annoying about Canadians, that they always make fun of the US, although we're much more culturally close to the United States than any other country. So our moral superiority, I think, sometimes is sort of undeserved.
In conclusion, Canada, you little sweet cheek you, I'll pick you up at 7. We're going out for some pancakes on that island, in a lake, on an island, in a lake, on an island. Stay tuned, Cape Verde is coming up next.
Cool video. Hope that filled in some of the history there for the very brief history of Canada. I think I'll probably do a video on that as well, just to sort of get more into it. But yeah, these are fun videos. I can see why they have so many millions of subscribers. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you made it to the end of the video, you're the best. Thank you very much. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, all that. Trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. And yeah, thank you for coming along with this Canadian journey with me. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. See you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.